At the end of this week's Torah portion, we read the sad but cautionary tale of the Makalel, the blasphemer. He was so upset at an unfortunate event that hadn't gone his way that he went out and cursed God. The sages had him placed under guard in a holding pen, in a jail of sorts, until Moshe, could clarify from God what punishment should be administered. Interestingly, there was another fellow who was also in jail at that time, the Makoshesh, the person who had violated the rules of the Sabbath. He had been placed in jail to wait the death penalty. They were just trying to clarify which death penalty to administer. The sages were careful not to place the blasphemer in the same holding cell as the Sabbath desecrator. Why? Because they didn't want to cause the blasphemer any unnecessary additional anguish. What anguish? Had he been placed in the same jail cell as the Sabbath desecrator, the blasphemer would have assumed, I'm also going to be killed. Here I am sharing a cell with a death row inmate. And even though, yes, he was eventually killed, it wasn't clarified yet at the time. So they didn't want to inconvenience him or aggravate him or worry him with the specter of death if he wasn't going to eventually be condemned to that punishment. But you have to wonder, why were they so worried about aggrieving the blasphemer? Think about what he had done. He had cursed God, the ultimate, unspeakable, unforgivable sin. In fact, the sages say that the reason why it wasn't clear what his punishment was to be, it was that they were thinking maybe his sin is beyond the pale. Maybe the death penalty is too good for him. That would be too lenient. Why? Because the death penalty, back then when it was administered, it wasn't just a deterrent, it wasn't just a punishment, it was a kapara, an atonement. Somebody who received the court-ordered execution would gain atonement for his sin. They thought that the blasphemer's sin, cursing God, the God whom he had seen rescue him miraculously from slavery in Egypt, part the sea for him, feed him manna from heaven and water through a miraculous well, and protect him from the elements through a cloud, cursing God, the giver of life, that sin is so unspeakable, you don't deserve the death penalty.
Hanging's too good for him. Burning's too good for him. He should be torn into little bitsy pieces and buried alive.
And yet, Moshe and the sages were worried about hurting the feelings or causing unnecessary anguish to the blasphemer after he had committed that unspeakable sin. What a lesson for us. If that's the case, then we've got to be worried about causing any anguish or torment or discomfort to anyone at any time in any situation. And the opposite side of the coin is just as important. Several years ago, I had to travel this time of year. I went to the airport, got in the security line. Finally, it was my turn. I went up to the TSA agent, handed her my driver's license. She looked at it, looked at me, looked at it, looked at me, looked at it. At this point in time, I started to say to myself, in my driver's license photo, I don't have a beard. Now I've got a beard because it's that time of year in between Passover and Lag BaOmer. So in conjunction with our custom not to shave, I'm sporting this scruffy look. Maybe she thinks I'm a terrorist. And finally, she looked at me, she smiled, and she said, I like the beard. I was so taken aback that I just smiled back and I said, no one has ever told me that before. Thank you. And I walked to the gate with a big smile on my face. Same amount of time, same number of words, you can ruin someone's day, aggravate them, torment them, or you can brighten or make their day.